Next, we're going to look at adding the ID integration, the intelligent code completion, into our spec file. So if you look at the website, the official documentation, there is this feature of intelligent code completion, which is offered by Cypress, where it enables IntelliSense, which is available for Cypress. It offers intelligent code suggestions directly in your IDE while you're writing the test. So this kind of IntelliSense allows command like pop-ups to show up for code completion when you just start writing something. So for us to do that, all we need to do is copy and paste this in the spec.js file. So I'm going to do that right here. That is all that's needed. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, you remember in cypress.json file, we added a base URL, changed that from HTTPS to HTTP. And then I'm going to go back over here, and I don't have to call this entire thing. I just have to give this, and then it will directly pull it from there. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to test if that worked for us. So I'm going to open a new terminal. I'm going to say npx cypress open. Okay, I'm going to run this and see if it worked. Okay, so that still worked. So it went to the local host as it should by taking it from the config file. That's cool. Next, I'm going to look at how to add locators and how to figure that out on our own by showing you an example. So now I have our application open. This is our application under test in localhost 3000. So now I'm going to show you how to find web elements in Cypress and how to figure out what locators we want to use to automate it. So let's take an example. First thing you need to do is just go to the place that you want to find a locator for, and then say inspect element. So that will show you the DOM over here. So this is what is highlighted. Here you can see it's an input tag name, and then it has a number of attributes inside, and then you can choose what you want. You have ID, you have name, type, class with all the class name, class values. And now let me show you how to utilize this in the code. For example, if we want to say for example, if you want to say sci.get, so you want to get something and then you want to clear that space because sometimes it's filled up with our autofill, and then you want to type something, right? So that is what I'm gonna try over here. Now let's try to see how to get the element over here for this. And then for clear you don't need anything, and for typing you need to type something inside. So what I'm gonna try is let's go with the by attribute name. So I'm going to show you different ways in which we can do this. So let's start with by attribute name. So Let's not even do all of this. Let's just get all of these elements with different options. Okay, so attribute name is nothing but, so these are all attributes: name, id, area invalid, type, class. These are all attributes, so I'm going to be calling it via attribute name. So I'm going to be calling it via, for attribute name it has to be under square braces. I'm going to be saying name over here, and then let's see how to get by, let's go with tag name. So sci dot get, if you want to get it with tag name, the tag name for us over here is input, right? So I'm going to say input. Then let's see how to do that by maybe class name. Okay, so that'll be sci.get. For class name, you have to keep in mind that you'll be using a dot. So this is a class, so this has 3 different names. There's one over here, 2, so there's 2 different class names mentioned here. So if you take the entire thing as it is, then it's the class value, but if you just take one of these, it's the class name. So for class name, you should always keep in mind that it'll be, you'll have a dot and then the class name. So let's see, I'm going to copy and paste this. Okay, so when you have it with the dot, that's how you write by class name over here for the CSS selectors. And then let's try by name and value. Okay, so when you say by name and value, do sci dot. Also, because we have the IntelliSense, you can see that it automatically gives me suggestions. That's how that works. That is because we added this reference to our code. So for name and value, let me say, so this is a attribute name over here, and value. So I'm going to say, so that would go in square brackets inside. So that would be like this: name is equal to username. Okay, so that's by name and value. And then let's try by class value. Sci.get. So as I mentioned, class name would be just one of them. They're separated with spaces, but class value will be the entire thing. So I'll be copy paste this entire thing. So I'll have a square bracket over here, and I will put this entire thing. That is by class value. Next, let's see how to get this by tag name and attribute with value. Okay, so what would that be? So you do sci.get. So you want your tag name, and tag name will be nothing but input. So this is the tag name, so that will be input. Okay, and then you want your attribute with value. So I can choose any attribute. I'm going to choose the name, username attributes. I'm going to say name is equal to username. So that is the attribute I'm going to go with. So that is that. Like that, you can choose any number of variations. You can mix whatever you want. Let's try by ID. So that will be by ID. That will be sci.get for ID, you always would use hashtag. So over here, my ID is username. So I'm just going to say hash username. So one thing to remember is for ID, it's hash. And for class name, it's dot. And everything else is like when you have name and value, you use square. And for values, you use square. And then when you have a tag and an attribute with value, this is how you use. Let's see another option where we could use two different attributes. Okay, so I'm going to use by two different attributes. So that'll be sci.get. So I'm going to choose, so this is one attribute, name, user, and then there's type text. So I'm going to use these two attributes over here. Or you could use ID and you could use whatever, up to you. So let me just try this. When you have two different, each one of them would go in their own square bracket. So this would be name is equal to username, and then over here I'm going to type is equal to text. Okay, so this is what I have. Now let's see what happens. Okay, now let's see by running this in Cypress what comes up. Okay, so you can see over here that over here when we just gave name is available in 6 places. So there's 6 matched elements that use this locator, and then input has 3 matched elements. So there's input in 3 places. So you cannot just use input to uniquely identify it. And then just the class name is also used in 2 places. So again, it's used here, looks like it's used here and here. So it's not something that uniquely identifies just the username, but username is uniquely identifiable just for username. Again, when you use the class value, so looks like these two use the same class value. Now again, when you give the tag name and the value, then attribute, then it uniquely identifies this. So when you gave only tag, and then when you gave only the and then if you give just the ID as well, it uniquely identifies it at the same time. So what you need to do is you need to select the locators that uniquely identifies that location, so that it can be selected properly. So this was an example of how to take a look at your web elements and figure out locators. So most of the time this would be enough. Like if you just understand how to take a look at the DOM and come up with selectors, the right CSS selectors, that should be good. So this will help you guide through how to select for the rest of the course. Just remember that when you have an ID, you have to have a hash before the actual ID name. When you have a class name, you have to have a dot before the class name that you select. And also remember that you need to find a uniquely identifiable locator. So as you saw in the test runner, not every one of them were uniquely identifiable. You saw that not every one of them was uniquely identifiable. So we have to make sure that we select the most uniquely identifiable locator while we actually use them in the test. Now we're gonna go through and finish this test case. So when we load this application, sometimes due to autofill, this gets filled up already. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna visit this page, and then I'm gonna say sci.get. I wanna get that CSS selector for that locator, and then I'm gonna say clear. I'm gonna clear that, and then I want to say type, because I want to actually type the input for that field. So we saw that ID worked really well, so I'm just going to go ahead with the ID for that field, and then I'm going to type Cypress 101. And then I'm going to do something similar for sci.get. I'm going to also type the password. I want to clear whatever would already be filled over there, and then I want to type. Now over here, let's see, let's inspect it and see what the ID is. The ID is password, so I'm gonna go ahead, put a hash password. Okay, I'm gonna remove these things, we don't need this anymore. So now we're gonna see how this works for us. So let's go ahead and run our test. So it's going to the URL, and you see it's typing Cypress 101, and it's typing password, and it's enabling the sign in button. So our test succeeded. So it's going and clearing whatever was there. So you can follow it over here. So first it's visiting the page, then it goes and gets the username field, and then it's clearing whatever is in that, and then it's typing Cypress 101 over here, and then it's going to get the password field, and then it's clearing that field, and then it's typing whatever password we want to type. Okay, so then our test succeeded over here. Next, we're going to finish up this test. So we went ahead and entered the username password. We want to click on sign in. Now let's see how to inspect this element over here. So I say inspect, and this is what I see. I see sign in, and I see a class value over here. So maybe how we can do this is can say sci.get. I see the text over here, right? So let's say sci.contains. So if it contains, the text over here is sign in. You have to be very careful about the exact capital or lowercase that's mentioned over here in the DOM. Sign in, right? And then I also want to specify maybe the value. So here, and then I'm going to give it, I'm just going to go with the class value. So class is equal to the class name mentioned over here. So since I'm going to be giving it as a value, I'm just going to copy paste this entire thing over here. So this is what this will look like. This would need this too. Okay. And then you can say dot click. So let's see if this works for us. I'm going to open this and I'm going to run the test again. Okay, so something is wrong over here. Something didn't go through. Let's see what mistake we made. Oh, I think I know what we did. It should be over here. Okay, let's see if this works. So you can see it went there, did these two, and it was able to click and it went into the application. So this worked for us. So you can see over here, when we clicked over here, it's able to point it out, and then it clicked it right here. We'll look at these things in the upcoming sections. Now, after we've logged in, let's write another test. So let me say it, our second test case. Very similar to the first one. Now I want this to be the only test that runs. I'm going to say it.only. So that will make sure that this is the only test that is going to run now. I'm going to copy paste this thing back over here. Okay. Now what I want us to do is go and click on bank accounts. Like after we log in, go and click on bank accounts and then click on create and then fill these up and click on save. Now for that, let's see how to do that. So let's do an inspect on bank accounts. Over here we have bank accounts and then we have some class names mentioned over here. So I'm going to say sci.contains. So just like the previous time, I want to also give, since the text is mentioned, I want to mention the text over here, bank accounts, and then I also want to mention the class name. So the class name, let's just say dot, let me try to give just this instead of the entire class value, or I could also give the entire class value, but let's see if this is uniquely identifiable. Dot click, right? So I want to give that. So that would take me to here, and then I want to click on this create button. So over here, what does it say? To that again, I want to do sci dot contains. I want to give the actual name of the button, create, and again over here I want to give the class name to it to go along with it. If you remember, class name will be followed by the dot over there. I'm going to click that, and then after we click that, I want to go ahead and enter all of these details. So let's see what it is for bank name. So we have an ID over here which uniquely identifies it. So I'm just going to use the ID for the bank name. And if you remember, for ID, you do hash over there. So I'm going to do sci.get using the ID. So I'm going to put a hash and I'm going to enter the ID name. And then I'm going to type inside that. I want to type a bank name, test bank. Okay. And then I'm going to type the routing number as well. So I'm going to say sci.get. After that, I want to type. So let me keep this ready. I'm going to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Similarly, I'm going to type account number. So I'm going to copy and paste this. Okay, so let's see for routing number, we're going to go and inspect that element. And we're going to see that it already has an ID over here. So if there's an ID, I'm just going to use that ID. I'm going to use the ID. Similarly over here, account number, I'm going to inspect it. And there is also an ID that's uniquely identifiable for account numbers. I'm just going to use that. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do, and then after doing that, I'm going to click on save. So the save button over here, so what this means is there is some more to it over here, so you have to open this. So for this, I am going to use multiple attributes. Okay, so I want to do sci.get sci.contains. Let's see if there's a type. Okay, he's gonna do let me do a value over here. Type is equal to submit. And then another thing maybe that can be uniquely identifiable for it is data test, right? So I can use a data test attribute. Data test is equal to bank account submit. That looks uniquely identifiable. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Okay. And then I'm going to say dot click. Let's see what our Cypress says about this. So I made a mistake somewhere over here. What is that? Unrecognized expression, more typography root, not script style, contains bank accounts. Okay, so we've done some mistake over here. Over here. Bank accounts. Okay. So let's go back to this and see what happened over here. In this one. Contains bank accounts and then click. Oh yeah. So when you're giving a class name, you don't really need to do this. Let's see if that fixed it. So I'm going to rerun this. Okay, so that went by. Now in create button, let's see what's happening. So in create over here, I made the same mistake. I don't need this for class names. Don't need square bracket for class names. So let's see if that fixed that. Okay, so that has fixed that as well. Next, what mistake have I made? Type submit. Data test is equal to bank account submit. Okay, let's see what happened over there. So if you go back here, bank account, this one, type submit, and data test bank account submit. So when we give two attributes, what mistake are we making over here? Oh yeah, so when we give two attributes, there doesn't need to be a comma, just two square brackets is enough. So that is a syntax mistake I've made. Let's see if this fixes it. Okay, let's rerun this. Passed. So if you see over here, if we backtrace it, so it goes to the account name, enters it, goes to this, enters the routing number, goes to the account number field, enters the account number, and then it clicks on the save. Right? Yeah, okay. So this is completed. Okay. Next, I want to show you how to use the invoke command. So for that, let me just add another test over here. I'm gonna say it dot only because I want to run only this test, and or the test case. And I'm gonna copy these because I still want to do this in the bank accounts. Let's go to create. Okay, let's go till here. Remove the dot only from here because I want to run the third one, not the second one. Okay, so after we go here, Now you see over here the create bank account. I want to first check for whether that is existing in that, right? So what we can do, first way to do that is so let's do an inspect element over here and we'll see what is available over here. So it should contain create bank account text, right? And then what else do we have? We have a class over there. So what we can do is let's do side.get. I'm just gonna go check the value of the entire class. I'm gonna copy this and I'm just gonna paste it in the square braces. Okay, should probably close this here. And then I want to verify if dot should, I want to verify if it contains that. So should contain that text which I want it to have. That is nothing but create bank account. Okay. So let's see how our test runner is treating that. Opening the test runner again. So if you see over here, only our third test case is running because we added it.only to our third test case. Logging in, signing in, clicking on bank accounts, going to create, and then it's expecting. So it's assertion happened over here and it expected and the test passed, which is what we expected, right? Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to show you another way to do that. Just going to make this a little bigger. So another way to do that would be I'm going to do the same. I'm going to copy this side.get and with the class value. So let me first copy this and paste it away. Instead of should contain, I'm going to do dot then label expect label dot text dot to equal, and then you give whatever you expect over there. Create bank account. Okay. So that is one way. And I'm going to show you another way also to do it, which is the third way. I'm going to copy paste it again. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to say dot invoke text dot then text what did I do? Curly. Made a mistake here. It won't be a square. expect text dot to dot equal, and then you add your text that you expect. Okay, so let's see how our test runner is handling this. Let's close this. I'm going to rerun this. So as you see here, again, this is our third test case running. So all the assertions happened over here. So you can use any one of the ways to do that assertion. So if you go to the Cypress documentation, the official documentation guide, you'll be able to see a section over here in the core concepts called interacting with elements. Now, if you go here, you have so many commands in Cypress for interacting with the DOM, and you'll see so many examples also, and some really good explanations on how they can be used. Now, for example, let's go and see check. Now, this is a syntax for check, and this is used especially for radio buttons and checkboxes. And they've given exact usage on how to use this for a checkbox and how to use this for a radio button. So I would suggest taking some time now to take a look at all of these examples and see how to use them in your coding, like in getting some more things automated for practice. And there's correct usage mentioned for each and every one of the examples over here, which makes it easier to understand and see how to use it. The Cypress documentation has everything that is needed at this point. Scroll and view, right click, anything that you need to do for any automation, you can just come to the document and you can see the example and you can use it accordingly. So Cypress bundles the chai assertion library for Sinon and jQuery, and it gives you a number of powerful assertions for free. And there is this nice, well-maintained documentation in the Cypress guide. If you go to references and assertions, you'll be able to find examples of all of these assertions on how exactly to use them. Now, we already did some examples for assertions over here. If you see, we did some to be equal to, and then should, expect, and things like that when we tried some of these. But if you want, you can take a detailed look at the list over there in the documentation. That will help you understand how to do assertions when you have to do a certain assertions at some point and you don't know how to do it. Just go to this page over here, and that will give you an exact example of how to use these assertions. See over here, with every little detail they've mentioned. This is for the list, and this is for retry until this input does not have class disabled. This is for retry until this text area has the correct value, text context, similar to what we did using the invoke command, visibility. So there's an example given for almost a lot of them. So when you take a look at this, you'll understand how to use that at any given scenario whenever you start writing tests.